So this second session is called Innovation. And I think as a sector, we're always challenged to be innovative, sometimes to the detriment of really good stuff that goes on. But it also seems to me that it's a bit of a magic ingredient, and that those organisations that are successful and grow and sustain themselves are pretty good at innovation. So what I wanted for you to hear this morning was really how they go about it and, you know, what they think about when they're innovating. So I'm very lucky that we've got Chris Smith to chair this session this morning. If you'd like to join us over here. He's the founder and MD of the Centre for the New Midlands. He's got a record of enhancing processes through collaboration, launching new initiatives of scale, and leading highly motivated and successful teams. So what a great chair we've got there. He's also a huge advocate of the West Midlands and seeks to create it as a more prosperous place to live, work, study, invest and play. So great, thank you very much. Second person I want to introduce is Ben Howells, who I'm a particular fan of. He's not someone that often comes out to events, and I have to really work hard to persuade him to come along today. But the stories that he can tell and his experience in terms of growing a thriving social economy organisation is absolutely brilliant. And what I love about the Living Well Consortium, which he leads, is that it's a consortium of smaller organisations who wouldn't otherwise have access to contracts with the NHS. He's also, in terms of the surpluses that he makes through the procurement work, set up a charity that's linked to developing R&D and supporting, again, those organisations to be creative and innovative in the field of mental health, which is the focus for his work. If you'd like to join us. I feel we need to clap. The next person I need to speak to introduce is Christy. Christy, who's runs an award-winning social economy organisation, Standing Tall. It enables employment of talented people with the lived experience of homelessness. And he has great skills and will bring, I'm sure, to the conversation today around CSR, social value and social entrepreneurship. And he's been working in the sector for quite a long time. So, Christy, come and join us. And we've got another person who I've had to really twist their arm to join this panel today, the wonderful Kevin Davis, who's a Deputy Lieutenant in the West Midlands. He's the CEO of the Vine Trust Group, social entrepreneur extraordinaire, education leader, and you've also got a number of non-exec director roles in health, care, and the Black Country Housing Group, and the Oversight Trust, who actually oversee the work of Better Society Capital. So he's got huge experience, and I'm so delighted that he's been happy to come and share his thoughts with us today. So welcome, Kevin. And finally, the lovely Gabriella, who's the CEO of Hope for the Community, which is 10 years old this year. She's a WISE 100 listed female social entrepreneur, celebrated for the work that she does in the sector, and a highly commended star of the Future 2022. So this is someone who's really taken her social business, grown it, sustained it, and been innovative, and is being recognised for that work. So welcome, Gabriella, come and sit down. So Chris, I'm going to hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the kind words of introduction. Okay, fantastic. So in a very tried and tested format, we're going to obviously turn to each of our panellists. You've had a brief introduction about their work, and we're going to ask each of them to talk for about 5 minutes in terms of innovation and where the social economy is driving change for communities. And then we'll go to the floor for questions as well. So before we do that, I would just like to give a shameless plug for the Centre for the New Midlands, as you'd expect. So, I launched the Centre for the New Midlands back in January 2020. We are a community interest company, and it was launched very much with the kind of eyes on the devolution game, Our areas of focus, we're a regional think tank, so we're solely around supporting policymakers, business, community organisations, politicians, hopefully find the new ideas and answers for how we build a better region for everyone, to coin the Mayor's phrases. So, as I say, we've been going 6 years. In terms of the social economy, my first kind of dabbling in this space was when I was at Coventry University. I think Melanie Mills is in the room. Possibly, Melanie, hi. Yeah, many moons ago, I was kind of at the table as Coventry University was embarking upon its kind of first steps into this space, and that's obviously where I met the fantastic Gabriella as well. So, and Christy, in terms of our panel, when I first launched the centre, I was looking, I didn't really know anyone in Birmingham. I was kind of, trying to build up a bit of a traction. And I saw the amazing work that Christy was doing as well around standing tall and his work. So it just felt that actually how great it is that we're on today's panel together as well. So, as I say, we've got 4 outstanding individuals who are doing great things all across the region. And it's a genuine pleasure for us to be able to hear from them today. And about how they're putting innovation at the heart of their business concepts and delivery. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Ben Howells, the CEO of the Living Well Consortium. You've got 5 minutes, Ben. I'm going to look at my watch. That's not because I'm bored, but because I want to keep us to 5 minutes. So over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I do leave the house. Obviously, Sarah says it's hard to go out. I'm not a hermit, but I just struggle to come to these events because we're quite busy. So, Living Well Consortium, we were set up over 10 years ago now by some quite visionary people who realised that the way to win public sector contracts was to come together as a group and to speak as one voice. So those people, I think, who set that up were 10 years ahead of their time. And the impact of their vision at that time and the gamble they took is still paying off. So that was some original innovation by those guys. We've grown from a turnover of 2 million 5 years ago to now having a turnover of 10 million. The vast majority of our work is contracts with the NHS or contracts with the Mental Health Provider Collaborative or contract directly with NHS trusts. We as a consortium then, we hold the contracts centrally from the NHS and subcontract out to our members or providers to do the work. So we have over 14 subcontracts, so they're very local, very small charities ranging from turnovers of 50,000 to turnovers of 2 million. Many of those have grown with us over the last 10 years and they've grown as organisations. I think one of the things I wanted to get in this 5 minutes is obviously the topic is innovation, and one of the things we've been good at, and the people who work with us have been good at, is two types of innovation. One which is dull innovation, as I would call it, and one which is exciting innovation. So one of the things when you're working on public sector contracts or working the NHS and the council, no offence to anybody from the council or the NHS, not apart from Carolina, they are quite slow to move and struggle to look at future, and often that is because they're very snowed under and very busy, so you have to offer them that vision of what could be. So one of the things we realised quite quickly was the use of data to be able to show outcomes, outputs, and what goes in actually comes out successful. So we've invested over the last 2 or 3 years again in new data systems. Now that's what I would call dull innovation. It's cost us money, it's used some of our surplus, it's taken a lot of staff emotional energy to get the data systems up and running. But what they do now is show the NHS how good we are. And that can't be challenged. That's national data. We've got staff. We've brought in data leads to ensure that staff put data in properly. And it's quite dull, but that investment has hugely paid off and enabled us to show what we can do. And that's enabled us for the NHS to give us more contracts in spite of themselves at times. So there's the dull innovation side. There's then the sort of more exciting innovation side, and what we've done, and it's been a gamble all the way through, is invest in new services and invest in new projects, try to make them work, and then show the NHS, look how good they are, would you like to fund it? One example I'll give is walk-in therapists. So we see nearly, in the last 12 months, we've seen nearly 18,500 people in Birmingham Solihull for CBT, or one-to-one treatment. So we have a big churn through of clients. One of the things we wanted to do was to train some of our CBT therapists to be able to deliver therapy while walking, because a lot of people don't want to sit in a room, they don't want to look face to face, they have an old vision of therapy. We pitched that to NHS. The NHS said, risk, no, can't do it, therapy can't be done walking, we won't fund it, on and on and on and on, cue torturous meetings. We funded 3 staff to do it. The waiting list grew enormously. The feedback we got from clients was fantastic. Took that back to NHS 2 years later and they went, oh, great idea, well done, we'll fund it now. So some of those things, and it's really easy to sit and say, and we were very fortunate in the first few years to have surplus to reinvest. We now don't have that, so things are much tighter because we've used a lot of that money to reinvest in services to try and grow, treat people better, ensure that clients get a better service to be able to win more contracts for the NHS, which then enables our smaller providers to grow. So I think the sort of really quick summary of that is what's helped us is having partners who buy into what we do, being able to do something and show it works, but also being able to be clear in what we set out as an organisation, in that we are not here to build up surplus, we are not here to build up a huge pack of money in the bank, we're here to reinvest that into better services to show people that they work, to then win contracts to do that. So I think that's sometimes can be a high-risk strategy, but that's how we've done it. And again, just looking at some days before I came on, in 2021-22, we saw 3,000 clients. The last 12 months, we've seen nearly 19,000 clients. So we've been able to show the NHS what works, show them different ways of doing it, and show them a successful outcome. And that's how we've sort of innovated to grow.
Wow. Ben, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And now we're actually going to pass on to Gabriella. Again, Gabriella does a fair amount in the healthcare space as well. But over to you, Gabriella, another Coventry headquartered business. Here we go.
Move to Coventry, eh? Anybody here from Coventry? Me and Chris, then. There we go.
We'll get a cab back together, is it?
Yes, we're going to go on the train. Oh, that counts, Carolina. That counts for sure. So yes, I'm from Hope for the Community. We're an award-winning social enterprise established to empower people with long-term conditions to take control of their health and well-being. We do it through a range of evidence-based self-management programs called the HOPE program that are delivered digitally or in person and licensed to organizations around the country. Now, that's the official bit, official spiel. The fact is we exist because whilst medicines advances, we live longer, but we don't always live in good health. And, I'm sure around this room or in our lives, we were all touched by long-term conditions in one way or another. And the fact is that long-term conditions, 1 in 4 people in the UK live with at least one long-term condition. That is set to grow to 3 in 4 at the age of 65 over the next 10 years. Now, some of those long-term conditions are not preventable. Some people are born with. Some come with age, cancer, diabetes. But some are also due to infections, long COVID, and other long-term conditions that have come around in recent years. And living with a long-term condition is not easy because whilst the system is trying to cure you, there is no cure. So you've got to manage, and not just the physical side of it, but the mental health side of it as well, because the two come together very often. And that is why we exist. We help people to empower them to focus on the things that they can do rather than the things they can't. We try to empower people to get most of healthcare where they can, so better conversations. But more importantly, it's a very simplistic power of peer support, of meeting people in similar situation, because that since cave days, when people sit around the table and talk about things, actually is a very powerful tool. But amongst that, we give them some tools and tips, and are very practical, because for us, hope is about taking action. So it's helping people to do that. Now, we started 10 years ago. We were actually founded we were based on research that originated at Coventry University. done by Andy, Professor of Health Psychology, who himself lived with arthritis all his life. And he didn't really start by setting up to do program or set up to do any innovation at that time. What he was looking at is how other people are doing it. So he was evaluating a lot of programs that already existed. Through that, he met Dave, who lived with kidney disease, Vicky, who lived with multiple sclerosis, and Wendy and Tina, who were parents of autistic children. And all of those people met together and decided, well, actually, the support probably isn't that good that is out there. We want to do something ourselves. So they did pay £35, set up a community interest company, and developed something called the HOPE program, which was a self-management program that originated from listening to voices of people that said to them, what difference do all of these programs make and how can we make them better? So they set up a very bold vision for everyone to have the tools to lead a hopeful and flourishing life. Everyone is a massive task. And they were all volunteers, and that's how it started. But it was all always built on lived experience, on the fact that co-design is really important, is doing with, not doing to, and that evidence-based, actually what is out there in research to be used in practice is really important, because let's focus on the things that work. It wasn't always easy. I joined them as a volunteer at Coventry University at the time. It took us 22 months to negotiate the intellectual property of the program to be transferred as an asset into an independent social enterprise spin-out. So one that wasn't owned or wasn't a commercial, and was a commercial entity, but not for drive for the shareholders. And I joined 5 years ago, and because I just met the people who benefited from the program and felt this should be everywhere, and how do we make it for everyone? So I took the leap, and that was January 2020. And one of the ways, because the groups were running community centres in churches, in halls, in libraries, how do you scale that? We had a train-the-trainer model, but, we couldn't really do that much with that at the time. And many people, more importantly, couldn't come to those groups. They didn't have time between on a Wednesday 10 to 12 if you've got a full caring responsibility. If actually really complicated for you is that decision to get dressed and get on a bus. So technology was always an element that we were looking at. And at that time, we started building a digital platform. And of course, March 2020 came, the whole country went into lockdown. And what do we do now? So we were already a little bit ready with our digital platform at the time. But we also, the digital platform was designed in a room with people who were like, this is what it should look like, and this is what it should do. Thanks to technology as an enabler, we are able to translate that group setting, that sort of learning and that experience into a digital space. And we're now reaching people from, we're connecting people between Shetland Islands and Penzance who've got rare conditions and never met anybody. We're able to enable people who've got mobility issues to actually feel heard and communicate with others. And thanks to technology, people who are housebound, people who haven't got the money to go to different places, are able to connect and meet others. But we built it as a flexible platform. We co-design. We've got 15 versions of the HOPE program, including one that we started for long COVID, which was sadly one of the most popular programs for us, but it was at the time when this was misunderstood. We stay small by design. There's only 5 of us, and actually never ever been any bigger than 5. And when I say 5, it's 3.4 FTE. We all know how that works. And we have a train-the-trainer model and a licensing model. So our key partnership of scaling to be able to reach thousands of people every year is through partnerships. And this is really important because it's those organizations that are trusted that we work with, like Macmillan Cancer Support, like the Firefighters Charity, like the NHS, that are trusted by people who live with those specific long-term conditions. But what we can bring in is that evidence base of our program. Now, with technology, we also, when we were building it, we thought there's a lot of waste in tech. There's about millions of apps that just never ever get used or even downloaded. We've built it as a platform. We thought one program for all, one that isn't about the condition, it's about the person. And also, how about other people who want to test and try technology to use our platform? So last year, we launched something called Powered by H4C, H4C being short for our company's name, which is a white label platform. And through that, we were able to even go internationally through PhD partnerships in USA, in Canada, and a lot of work in Indonesia. Whilst we look like we do a lot, this diversified income keeps us sustainable and lean. And so much so we've done in technology that last year we were actually named Technology Social Enterprise of the Year.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. And just obviously, touching upon Afzal's opening address in the morning, that sort of taking the bold action as a social entrepreneur, seeing where, you might need to pivot and take bold steps to grow the business is really inspirational. So, yeah, fantastic, Gabriella. Kevin, over to you. I saw you on the front row, sort of wincing a bit when your sort of CV was being read out in terms of your impact as a social entrepreneur.
It's more about, I wasn't resistant to come. It's just a case of getting into my diary. I always do things for Sarah if I'm free and available. She's a fantastic advocate for our region, and we should celebrate you more often.
Here.
So I'm not from Coventry. I'm from Walsall, God's own country, but I do have a Coventry connection. I won't be able to be here for most of this from lunchtime onwards because I sit on the NHS ICB board and chair the Coventry Care Collaborative, and there is a link between that in terms of health outcomes and what I do. But if I take you back to around 2013, I was about to open my second school. And I was waiting, there was a long line of dignitaries, the Lord Lieutenant, the High Sheriff, and we were waiting for a certain royal, who's less royal today. And when the entourage arrived, etc., they were sitting in our social enterprise restaurant. We had 4 of them at the time across the Black Country area, employing young people that some considered to be harder to employ. And I've got to say, running a social enterprise restaurant is the hardest thing I've ever done, to be truthful, and I've done quite a few things, but very rewarding in terms of the life opportunities we gave to those young people who may not want to have a career in catering, but gave them that first step into employability. Anyway, the second school was called Walsall Studio School. I'd opened up my first one, oh my goodness, I think it was 7 years prior. And it was a response to young people who weren't getting the best out of education, being excluded from school. It was initially a part-time course. And because we were seeing some results, our partner at the local college said, can we extend the time period from 12 hours to 25 hours a week? What we didn't know was by moving from 12 hours to 25 hours, wherever it was, we got on the radar of the Department of Education and said you have to be registered. Well, what does that mean? Registered means you have to become an independent school with all the regulations and Ofsted and the like. And so we had to take a choice whether to stay small or take that next step forward. We obviously took that step forward and ran it and contracted with all the schools in Walsall bar the 2 grammar schools for obvious reasons. But it wasn't paying. We were having the crumbs off the table, and there's always that fight and negotiation to get a bit more money, particularly when we're working with small classroom sizes, high ratio of staff to pupils. And the young people we were working with needed more than just a classroom-based education. They needed vocational approaches to teaching and learning. So we started to look for employers who would want to do the project side of working with our young people. And when they weren't there, we set up our own enterprises. So we used our own social enterprise restaurant to engage and support some of those young people, and then went looking all around. And when the certain royal, who we don't talk about, and the Lord Lieutenant and the High Sheriff and the like were sitting in this restaurant, they were interested, or particularly one of the entourage was saying, Kevin, we're really interested in that work you're doing with IKEA. And so I had set up a project with IKEA, which ran for 10 years, where we basically put apprentices across their network, across England, Ireland, and a little bit of France, a little bit in Spain. And I said, our particular royal, who we don't talk about anymore, was the patron of a campaign in London the Evening Standard were running called the Ladder for London. And the Evening Standard wanted to raise the profile of youth unemployment in the capital and wanted to galvanise the support of big businesses like Goldman Sachs and Metro Bank down to the small plumbers in Shoreditch. And they said, Kevin, do you think you could bring that campaign to the Midlands? I said, well, I don't know, I'll have to speak to the Express and Star and the Birmingham Mail, etc., etc. And backwards and forwards to the palace, as you do. We had this key meeting, and where I was having meetings before in some dusty old Dutch, I will say Duchess rather than Duke, Duchess's bedroom, which was converted into office. Instead of going right, we went left, and the carpet starting to get a bit thicker and redder, and there was more gilding on the wall. And we sat in this big room, and we had the MD of the Evening Standard, the Chamber of Commerce, IKEA, all around the room saying, can we create this thing called the Ladder Beyond London? And that room was the centre room. Have you heard of the centre room? The centre room is the room of the balcony. So if I'd stepped out a little bit more, I could have just waved at the crowd, but I resisted that. But we sealed the deal in that room and set up a foundation in the end, which promoted and championed apprenticeships across not just the Black Country, but Birmingham, Shropshire, Coventry and Warwickshire. And I've done and do an annual awards. We've got our awards tomorrow night, so I can't be at I double booked myself. I was supposed to be at your thing tomorrow, but I now have to speak at our awards tomorrow, so that's where I am at, so forgive me for that. But from one school to two schools, and then two schools to 10 schools, so we now have an eclectic mix of comprehensive studio school, which is this vocational school that we set up where this the Royal, we don't mention anymore, opened up. And then special school and a whole collective schools, to the point now we've got 10,000 students. I think at the time when we set it up, I was turning over 60 grand. We now as a group will turn over 100 million. And it's all thanks to, in part, getting a big chunk of social investment. So I borrowed 1.7 million, a bit of blended finance, which I didn't know how I was going to pay it back I didn't know how I was going to pay it back, sorry. Sorry.
I hope that wasn't your pitch to the lender.
There was a plan. There was a bit, but we paid it back, all of it. And so I'm a big, strong advocate. So when COVID came, I've moved from chief exec roles to now oversight and chair, and I decided to do a number of things which might come in the next question, which might help us that, so I'll stop there.
That sounds wonderful. I'm slightly nervous about you preempting the questions. Fantastic. And it's obviously such a shame we can't mention Prince Harry anymore, isn't it? That's a joke. Right, over to you, Christy. Over to you, sir.
Follow that. So my story is that I used to run a night shelter in Digbeth for people experiencing homelessness. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years. And I spotted that there was incredible talent in the room. They may be feeling pretty rubbish about how things were for them, but they had loads to offer. So I guess the first part of innovation for me was trying to design something that was a genuine solution. You know, somebody who had talent in a difficult place, giving them a real opportunity to, a year later, being a much better place. So what Standing Tall does is 3 things, but the crucial bit is we do it all at the same time. If we did one bit, it wouldn't work. So we matched people with full-time real living wage jobs with good employers, with Barclays, Network Rail, ISS, Serco, Wimvic, some big employers. Then we have amazing people who have spare rooms. So we describe it as Airbnb for good. So when the person has started their full-time job, we move them in with one of our hosts, and they live together for 6 months, and they pay rent. And we train our host to support the person in the right way so that when they have a bad day at work, they can hopefully get through it. And then the third thing we do is we give them 12 months of one-to-one support. So we have a member of staff called a talent scout who has amazing emotional intelligence. That's their core competency. And they work with the person for 12 months. And so we're seeing 80% of the people we're helping staying in a job for at least 12 months and stepping out of homelessness. So it comes back to me of just the simple idea that works for that person. So we're in 8 cities now and a few more next year, so it's going really well. I think that the one bit I wanted to talk about in terms of innovation is, I think we all probably know, if you're kind of specialist in your area, whatever group you're working with, we all kind of have a pretty good idea of what the solution is. But the tricky bit is, how do we pay for it? And so what I've learned is I've had to demonstrate, prove the model to show it's working, and then find out where the money is. So we there's money everywhere, and it's a case of looking in the right places and then packaging the offer in the right way. So at the moment we have two offers. We go to these big employers and we say, pay us a placement fee. So we're a kind of recruitment agency. They pay us £4,000 or £5,000 for each person who has been sitting on the pavement, but they're worth way more than £4,000 or £5,000 as far as I'm concerned. But that we can only talk to businesses that have entry-level roles, so that's quite restrictive. So our new offer is to any business who can invest and sponsor some of the people we're helping. So over 12 months, they can sponsor 10 people for £25,000. And that's obviously traded income for us to help more people. So the one message I'd say is generate the value and then think about the people out there who will pay good money for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sure you'll agree with me, 4 incredibly inspirational social entrepreneurs. I've got some questions, but I think there's probably more value in everyone in the room asking those questions. So, show of hands in terms of the interest in asking questions. Don't be shy. There's 1, 2, 3. Any others? Okay, so let's go. I'm going to go to the floor, if that's okay with our panel. Could I please ask you to state your name, organisation, and whether it's a general question or who you'd like to direct the questions to? So, over to you, sir. There you go.
Okay, George Bramley, based at the University of Birmingham, and I'd like your observations on public sector procurement of innovation generated in the social economy.
And we'll do one question at a time. Who's going to answer that one first? Over to you.
So, when COVID kicked in, I decided I wanted to do some more non-exec work and be involved in systems change. So I went to look for portfolios that matched my aspiration, because I believed that health, housing, as well as education and social finance were maybe part of the key story in terms of driving some of the change. And I just was finishing a stint on the Black Country Local Enterprise Partnership, and I had this portfolio around the social economy. And we devised a policy paper, which we got all the local authority leaders, the councils, the educationists to sign, called the Economy of Together. Had no money to it, it's just about principles and about what we were hoping to do. And then obviously George Osborne got rid of the LEPs. So it was a real shame. But that principle for me was still in place. My Coventry role on the ICB will finish at the end of this year, academic year, calendar year rather. And I will be joining the cluster for the Birmingham, Black Country and Solihull ICB. So that they squash the two together. And the portfolio they've given me is voluntary community, social enterprise and faith. And one of the areas, obviously, with less money, well, there's more money, but less money going around in terms of the wider ecosystem, is around what we're doing around strategic commissioning. Yeah. And making sure that where a lot of the money is being absorbed in hospitals and the like, how can we release and empower the wider sector, people like you in the room, to be part of that, particularly in neighbourhood settings. So for me, that is where my particular focus is, and how we can try and unlock and shake the tree a bit more, which I know will be a very hard task, given that I have found, certainly my experience in the NHS, is that they can be very short-termist, and instead of long-term, and the long-term is where you guys and gals are in terms of your investment, and I want that perspective to be part of the story. And the NHS is a big player alongside other public sector partners, and we can see what we can do to try and drive that change.
Yeah, I mean, without putting pressure on you, Kevin, you can directly do that now in that new role, because we work to the ICB, the MHPC, the total commissioning percentage to the third sector from the mental health budget in Birmingham was about 4.5%. Okay, so that tells you all you need to know. We've been working in that sector for a long time. We push and push and push. Even with our growth, that's still how much the percentage is. Everybody's heard good words. Everyone's heard good intentions. Everyone's heard, I think somebody said it earlier, I've had enough of pilots. I thought, well, just put that on a T-shirt and let's all wear it. Pilots have worked and no funding has come. So the public sector procurement bit is absolutely the most important bit for me, because that is where the money is. There's £350 million in the mental health budget for Birmingham alone. 4% of that comes out to third sector. So there has to be a change in that, because now as a sector we have proved it works. We have proved we can deliver services better, cheaper, more efficiently, and shown the outcomes. But something has to change, and to be absolutely blunt, I don't know what that is. We've been having these conversations for a long time, but both with councils and NHS budgets, more of that has to be pushed out to the innovation and drive that is in the social enterprise and third sector. And it is absolutely there. It's not just us saying it. We see it. I see it every day. And organisations like the NHS, they are too big and have too much on to innovate now. They are just trying to keep up. So they should pass that innovation out to this sector, to these organisations to do. But somebody has to do that. And it has to stop being this round and round of we're here every year saying, why isn't there more public sector budget being pushed out into the third sector? We as a consortium have had to fight for every penny we've been given. And often that is in direct clashes with people who are funding us, who are still very suspicious of us because we are not public sector and we are not statutory. There should be no difference. That suspicion shouldn't be there anymore. But that has to come from people at the top, and that has to come from organisations like all of us continuing to show what we do works. And to go back to the original point, some of that is public sector procurement, is strength in numbers. We have grown because we are now too big for them to say no to. And we are too good at what we do to show the results that if we were to be decommissioned or shrunk, we could kick up a fuss. When you're not that big, there's no fuss to kick up. So the more that we all come together as a sector to keep that message being reinforced and showing what we do, as Christy just said, show the value, show what it is, and then look for the money. But it shouldn't always be like that. And that can change.
And showing the importance. And showing the importance of your results is key, as you said earlier, around data, and being able to back up your outputs is really, really essential, I think.
Just finally on data, again, we put a lot of money into the data system. Our data now that we can show is better than the NHS's. It's quicker, we've got AI, it moves faster, it's live. That cost us a lot of money to invest in that we didn't get from the NHS. But again, it's just another stick to say, look at this, you can't shut this down because it works, and we can show it works.
Fantastic. Did any other contribution from the panel? No? Okay, on to our next question. Over to you.
Cheers. Meena Baradwa from Access the Foundation for Social Investment. Hi. So I'm really interested in this idea of growth. So what gave you the confidence to grow, and what can foundations, funders, the combined authority and others do to support sort of enterprise confidence?
Perfect. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess growth is obviously different for every organisation, what that looks like. You know, I know for our work in Birmingham, we've got one member of staff helping 15 people. And I don't see us increasing the numbers of people we can help. I think that 15, we'll just keep on finding 15 people every year and helping them. But for us at Standing Tall, our growth is in more cities. So the model of the 15 people can start in other places. So, you know, for us, we know that we need £50,000 to start in a new city, to pay for the first 12 months, and then it pays for itself with a placement fee. So Barclays, we've seemed to be got very good friends with Barclays, and they're putting up 100k for Glasgow and Dublin next year, and they're wanting us to look at 2 cities in America. So that's another level that we're not quite ready for. But the growth for us is about starting in a new footprint.
Isn't that incredible, just to say, a Birmingham headquartered social enterprise doing such amazing work internationally, potentially. Brilliant. Over to you, Gabriella.
Yes, and I think it reinforced that it's always we talk about growth, like everything needs to be bigger. Sustainability is our 10 years, I think is a massive achievement. We're still the first and only social enterprise spin out from research at Coventry University. It shouldn't be like that, but we are here still 10 years later. So for us, growth is actually about collaboration and it's about sharing, so similar to that. So yes, there are 3.4 of us, but we reach tens of thousands of people because we have partnerships, and these partnerships are either national or they may be local, however they work. And I think that's the power of actually being comfortable with letting what you've got go. So for me, it's important that the Firefighters Charity talks about this is our hope program. Macmillan Cancer Support, this is our hope program. We sit in the background. We do what we do good. We innovate. We've got funding from Innovate UK recently, and you asked about funders. They did a competition a couple of times just for social enterprises. And I think, in the world of Innovate UK, where, people backed by shareholders, great ideas don't get funding, actually it's much smaller pool when it comes to social enterprises. It is not easy to get money from them for sure, but we were lucky 2 times. And I think is that element about what does growth mean for you as an organization, the possibility of just let's let it go, because if I felt that we could do everything, I would have, and could do it nationally or internationally, the overheads, the space, and we employ people with long-term conditions. Everybody works at home because it's better for them, because they can manage their condition. And I think that's the importance. So for me, the growth is about the impact that we create in terms of scale within the depth and quality of it. It isn't always numbers. Now, we have reached 33,000 people through our programs, but we could not have done it. But it's not about the numbers. It's again about how do we grow the difference that it makes to them? How do we make sure that when they attend our wellbeing programs, that all those people who've had barriers or all those people who are on it maximize their we call it a dose of hope. You don't need to do 6 sessions. We've seen it. So again, the evaluation back for us about research, really important. So what is the dose of hope that people need to get better? What are those things? And I think that's where growth is, because sometimes it's about the quality, not always the quantity. And I think partnerships, and I'll be definitely talking to all of those afterwards for sure, but it's partnerships is key. And I think there's something about our sector being so good at being collaborative and about letting go. And I know it's tougher now because we're all fighting for the same money, but that doesn't mean that we can't be innovative in the way we do it, because what I've learned is creativity in funding is a very, very important skill. So be curious, be creative. That's what I've learned.
Thanks, Gabriella. Thank you. Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in terms of I thought it was inspirational during your talk where you spoke, you were almost at a bit of a crossroads in terms of, do we either really accelerate what we're doing or not?
I mean, our growth hasn't just been because we wanted to be bigger. I think we're probably the biggest multi-academy trust that's homegrown, right, as opposed to a lot more bigger, but some the ones that are based in the Midlands. There is some benefit of size. There is access to politicians, policymakers that you can have that maybe a small organisation, and I've been there, hasn't had. You have unique, similar challenges, just a few more zeros and a HR team to deal with that perhaps you hadn't had to have before when you're doing everything in yourself. But at the heart of it, I'm still a social entrepreneur. I want to change this world. When I looked at it in the healthcare arena, the stats tell me that between 10 and 20% of the healthcare challenges that people face are clinical. The rest can be due to the wider determinants. And yet a lot of the money and resources is focused in the main on the health situation rather than the wider stuff. So trying to get people to operate outside of their silos, to share budgets where necessary, to see where the most optimal solution would be, is part of the challenge a non-exec has. I'm not an exec, so I can't do things, but I'm certainly going to have a go, and certainly having a go in the spaces that I'm in. So I think that change. I mean, I would say, and this is a bold, maybe crazy thing to say, I said, let the revolution start here, in this room here today. Certainly for what's happening with the NHS coming up, and with what we decide as an outcome. I'm open. I'll be open to the criticism if I don't do my job properly, or Kevin, you haven't done enough. But I'd rather be criticised for having a go rather than not having a go. And so, whereas I can't write you a blank cheque from the health point of view, I can certainly point people in the right direction to say what's working, and not just in the health arena, but what we're doing with housing and education to try and make that real material difference to this region, which is a fantastic region and should get, as people said earlier, more of a spotlight to it.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any other questions in the room? We got one here, one here. Yep. Oh, this is a very popular panel, isn't it? Right, over to you.
Mariana Ruda Association. When you diversify your portfolio, what do you have a method that you would like to share with us? Do you do market research? If other social enterprises are already doing what you do, what is your method that it's quite unique to you? And when it gets tough for you, I suppose you have mentors. So if you want to share some of your mentors or the books that you get inspiration from, that'll be grateful. Thank you.
I think the change and the pivot thing's really interesting. Again, we've used the dull side of it to drive some of the exciting side. So we've had enough data and enough services running to say there's an enormous gap there. I can give you an example. We've pushed statutory funders for a long time to create better spaces for people to have treatment in. That a lot of people don't want to be seen in a GP surgery for mental health problems. They don't want to be seen in a cold, blank, plain room. It needs to be somewhere they actively want to be to try and get better. That took us 2 years to drive some capital funding out of Centre NHS England to fund our Grounded project, which is 3 venues across Birmingham that have a cafe in and has mental health support in. But we could never get funding for the revenue side of that. So we got the capital funding to open them, but couldn't get funding for the revenue. And what we've been able to do then, with a year or two of them running, is to show the enormous numbers of people using those services and the enormous numbers of walk-ins, the lower DNA rate, the higher turn-up of complex people, feedback from people saying, I wouldn't have come to treatment if it wasn't in such a nice place. So we've been able to draw some pots of funding, move to a different area, and then show how much that's needed. Now, again, that has come from the benefit of scale, and I understand is much harder further down the ladder. But I think, again, being able to show a gap, show that you can fill that gap with a constructive, positive service. And some of it does come down to cost. You have to show it's cheaper. You have to be able to show that you're cheaper than statutory services. And again, it shouldn't be like that, but that's been a really important part for us to continually show that our cost per unit is consistently cheaper and that we can draw in match funding from other grant funders. So I think learning to pivot and move into different direction, we very much used where we categorically gaps are to do that.
Yep, please
just
do.
for me, I'd say that this is quite recent that last sort of 3-6 months, our budgets haven't been as great as we wanted them to be, where we wanted them to be. I for the last year or two came from a point of view that we were helping X number of people. Our expenditure for the organisation is X amount, so it costs us, let's say, £5,000 per person that we help. And we were working out the pricing from that point of view. So it's been a change of mindset for me that we can actually charge more than what we're spending. We can, if there's value, if the businesses see value to, give us 5,000 placement fee or 2,000 sponsorship, and it means that we've got more money coming in than we're spending, then that's a good thing. So that's a change of mindset for myself.
And I'd just like to add on the last one, it would be really not to, I've seen in our sector a lot of people on the brink of burnout because, as you said yourself, it is not 9 to 5. We do a lot. We carry the money a long way, that's for sure, but it does come with a price. So, in my personal, I don't really have a book or anything that I could recommend. I have a golden retriever and I rehomed him. And basically one of the reasons was I found myself sitting at my desk all the time and not moving. And as we know, sitting is the new smoking and everything else. And I need a reason to do things. So he is my reason. But I guess that comes from that perspective that, yes, there are great guys, mentors are great. And obviously your board's very important to make sure they've got your back. And you really want people who are, in your corner. But more importantly is you've got to find what works for you. And I think that is really important because, to keep ourselves well, is really important. So, yes, there are other breeds of dogs and there's cats and other pets, but, research shows whatever works for you. We've got people, we encourage people to rest more rather than setting goals to do more. So I guess find it for yourself, because I think it's really important that passion doesn't get sort of slightly lessened down by the fact that we get to that element. But it is happening, and I would encourage people to pay more attention to themselves. It is not selfish, and actually accepting help, asking for help is really important for us to still be here in 10 more years, hopefully, celebrating still our social enterprises.
Thank you. I think we have time for just one more question. As much as I'd love to leave on the note of a golden retriever, over to you. If you'd like to just say your name, organisation.
Good morning. My name is Devinder Kaur, CEO of an organisation called Sweda, based in West Bromwich, a charity that has been operating for 35 years. It's a question and a comment, really, going back to Kevin's comment towards the end. So recently, we were part of a project that was funded by NHS Integrated Care Board about the wider determinants of health. Highly successful, and I think it ran across the Black Country. We were a Sandwell partner, achieved great results. NHS was very nervous, or ICB very nervous to start off with when they started to work with us. It was a consortium approach. And as I said, it's extremely successful. They extended it for another 6 months, and then we were told the funding has finished. Model that really works. Local residents were using it really well. And the key thing was that any person who was receiving the support to go to all 15 organizations to get the specialist support that they were providing. And it was, as I said, tackling the wider determinants of health with various issues. So this short-termism of funding is where the issue is, even when the pilots or projects that they're starting up. And I think the key issue, we've addressed that this morning as well. We keep on facing it again and again, 6 months of funding, 1 year of funding, when actually the interventions are working very successfully, and I don't know what the solution is. Because as small social enterprises or small charities, organizations working with local people, we don't have that much influence. And I think this is where the major barrier is.
I've known Devinder for a long time. She's again another excellent advocate for what you do in the sector, beyond in Sandwell and beyond. The question was asked, excellent question about how you sort of motivate yourself. And in response to Devinder's question, I think part for me is it's two things. Iron sharpens iron, so I like to be around people who can inspire me and challenge me. And I think the questions like that Devinder's asked will be the challenge, which I hope will be put before me, and hopefully will be answered by the end of my NEM term in the NHS. That we need to be looking beyond that. The other one is misery likes company, in the sense that you don't feel like you're on your own when you're facing those challenges, and you can share with each other. So I think, I'm not saying you're all miserable people, but a gathering like this is really good for us to know that we're not on your own. For me, I'm a faithful person, so that's my other retreat and inspiration. But I think for us, we are social entrepreneurs, and so we find a way. I'm not saying it's the most optimal way. If someone gave us the resource to make it happen, that's maybe the easier route, and we would like that. But I guess there's that entrepreneurial part of us which finds solutions, and I'm not saying that's the way we always be telling our commissioners. We'll just make do. That's not. We want excellence, and we are excellent people. So for me, I think part of this challenge, and in response to Devinder's question, is let's see if we can find a way, and I'll need your help to do that. I'm sure you're going to find me on LinkedIn and whatever, and send me lots of messages and stuff. But let's see what we can do.
Okay, and with that, I think that's the end of the session. So a huge thank you to our panel. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your questions.